Retired generals call for a military coup in France, Marine Le Pen supports the idea, and Ursula von der Leyen plans to punish Brexit Britain. Well, it's all kicking off across the continent today. We have a number of people in France who are not happy with Emmanuel Macron's government. We have the European Parliament debating and voting to finally ratify the Brexit trade deal. And Ursula von der Leyen is actually planning to give extra powers to the EU Parliament to punish the UK for being a sovereign and democratic country. But let's start by talking about Macron's government, because over the last few years, since 2016-17, they have made a number of decisions that haven't been completely popular with the French voters. And this whole centrism that Macron tried to introduce hasn't been going down too well with the leftists, the socialists, but also the right-wing nationalists across France. What we have is that a number of retired generals have come out to advocate for a military takeover because of the way the issues that France is currently facing with a number of recent attacks on the streets. They're saying that Macron's rhetoric is one thing, but in terms of action, we're still not seeing anything from the French president. This is actually getting quite weird at this point because Marine Le Pen is also getting involved. We're going to talk about that in a second, but 20 retired generals have created a political storm. They've written this letter, an open letter, to say that we need to advocate for military takeover to ensure that the government in France is strong against the enemies that they have. So this open letter was, and one of the obviously signatures that they had is from a former head of the Foreign Legion. And Macron's government have condemned this open letter. Of course, that's what they would do. But because they're saying that they're comparing this whole situation to the failed coup that happened against Charles de Gaulle about 60 years ago. Now, of course, this could just be gimmicks, and it might not really be popular because France is still a democracy. But there are a lot of people who are just sick and tired of inactivity that we are seeing from the central government in France. And a number of politicians from both sides, left and right, have been criticizing Emmanuel Macron. And we're going to talk about why this matters, because the election is coming up and Macron, in the opinion polls, he's going slowly, is going down, but he still has a massive chance in winning the next election. This open letter says that France is in danger. Several mortal perils threaten her. Even in retirement, we remain soldiers of France. And yes, I mean, this is the whole point, because they're saying that we have served France and people actually have to listen to us. And again, this is creating a very tribal battle at this point. It's us versus them. And us versus them is no longer about the enemies of France. It's about a lot of people, including the Yellow Vest movement protesters, against the actual government of Emmanuel Macron. Because they're talking about how the police brutality against the Yellow Vest movement was one thing, but the inactivity from the government against the real enemies is showing double standards. True, we have seen the way the French police have been treating the protesters over the last few years. And if they were really robust, they would do the same thing to the actual enemies of France. This is why Marine Le Pen has come out to actually support the idea. She's hailed the idea of a military takeover, which is kind of a bit crazy, obviously. It's still a democracy, and I have no idea why everything's getting so emotional at this point. But as I said, I understand the anger, because Emmanuel Macron has not been a great president. And on a number of issues, he's been okay. His rhetoric on free speech has been okay. But again, we need to see action rather than just words. Empty promises from centrist politicians has become a norm over the last few decades, unfortunately. But this is a problem that the European Union have at this point, because they're trying to manage the whole continent. Like the EU27 government that we have, they're currently not really in full control because of the way things have gone since Brexit. And Ursula von der Leyen, as the head of the European Commission, has been trying to find ways to exercise more power and control over these countries. And everything else since the Brexit vote and since the Brexit deal was actually signed and implemented has actually proved that. I mean, we saw over the last year with AstraZeneca and the contracts that they had, the Commission took over the whole game and they made a mess. And now they're trying to do the same thing with the post-Brexit Britain relationship that they're supposed to be having. But in France, they're losing control. And this is the whole problem with Euroscepticism across the continent. We're going to talk about the European Union's problems, but when you look at the first round of polling in France, Le Pen and Macron are actually neck and neck, both on 26%. Of course, when it comes to the second round of voting, it's speculations, but the prediction is that Macron is still leading, but it's not really that wide. He did much better in 2016 in the opinion polls and the actual vote that came, but 54% versus 46%. It's still too close to call, and it could change. Of course, if Le Pen somehow wins this election, the whole of the continent and the European Union should be really, really worried about the prospects of this United States of Europe that they really want. Now, speaking of the United States of Europe, Ursula von der Leyen is very robust now. She's prepared to punish Brexit Britain if Boris Johnson and the UK government try their best to protect the integrity of the United Kingdom, especially Northern Ireland. They've said that if you try to keep trade smooth between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, we're going to come after you. They want to be able to have a say on how the British government are running our own affairs. This is a big problem because she's said that the Brexit deal that we've signed will have things in it that the EU could use against us, and she said that Brussels will not hesitate to take action against the UK if it breaches its terms. It's interesting because the European Union breaks its terms on a regular basis on a number of agreements that they have. No one really cares. But when it comes to the British government trying to protect the UK, apparently that's a problem. Now, the whole thing is coming up because of the debate and the vote to ratify the Brexit trade deal in the European Parliament. And what, again, Ursula von der Leyen and the Commission are trying to do is they're giving more powers to the Parliament, the fake Parliament, to be able to police the Brexit trade deal. Now, we know exactly why they're trying to do that. One, they're trying to gain the trust and support of those in Europe who've completely given up on the European Union as a project. And two, they know that the European Parliament is still kind of dominated by a lot of people who are not too happy with Brexit. They want the Europhile groups in the European Parliament to have complete say and control over the way this relationship is going to go. So we know exactly what they're trying to do. And the Eurosceptics in the European Parliament are not just going to sit down and just be quiet. We saw earlier how this debate across the European Parliament, in the chamber, we had a number of Europhiles just attacking Britain because we tried to become an independent and sovereign country. But some MEPs defended us. So we had an Italian MEP, Antonia Rinaldi, who stood up and actually apologized to the UK on behalf of the European Union for all the attacks, for all the insults that have been throwing at us, not just today, but over the last few years since the Brexit vote. So this is actually quite interesting because he said that in 2 months, it will be 5 years since the Brexit referendum. How many disgusting lies have we had to hear? And he actually says that these are the same people who told us that Brexit would mean that the UK will only have 2 days of food and medicine stocks. And then, as a country and as an island, we would just sink into the depths of the ocean. That's true. They did say it. They did say the whole world is going to end and the UK will just be isolated and stockpiling will be a problem. None of that, of course, happened. And he actually says that, on the other hand, they did not understand the legitimate will of a great and proud country that preferred to exercise its sovereignty in a democratic way instead of delegating it to bureaucrats in Brussels. So Antonio is absolutely spot on this. The problem is that, of course, you have some good Eurosceptic MEPs in the European Parliament, but the national governments of the EU27 are still run by Europhiles, generally speaking, up from a couple of countries like Hungary. But the European Commission will be the real boss at the end of the day. So whatever's happening in France right now, they will find a way to completely take over. Of course, the retired generals, with that letter, it's just rhetoric at this point. But these people are completely prepared to take over the French government, as in the European Union, to make sure that everything is bureaucratic and centralized. I will keep you guys posted on this because it's getting hilarious. Whatever's happening in French politics with the elections coming up. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell next to it, and make sure to click like if you enjoyed this content. I'm Tousi, and I'll see you guys in the next video.